Hello, everyone, and welcome to our 30,000 subscribers special. And of course, my subtitle here is Who Needs Premiere When You Have Slides? Now, I put this together kind of over a couple different days, answering some of the questions that people posted for me on my YouTube community page. It's kind of the page where I look for stuff, especially for computer community, I should say. Computer interaction's good too. Now, one of the things I wish I had was a lot more time, like, if it was during the summer or something like that. And then I give you a bunch of little video clips and things like that. But I'm going to do what I can with what I have, because that's been my personal philosophy pretty much all along. So some of the questions people asked me, and I'll kind of go through this. And at the very end, I will do a little bit of flying. And yeah, I'm going to demonstrate my favorite sound effect an airplane can make. And it's probably not what you think it is. And I will get to that later. So one of the first questions somebody asked me was, what is my first gaming machine? Like, what is my gaming history like? My first gaming computer, of course, is this lovely Tandy TRS-80 from Radio Shack. This one's actually got a much better display than I had. I had an old television, which I kid you not, you could grab the big hand and go click, 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 click to actually change what channel I was on, kind of a thing like that, and lose my screen. One of my favorite things about the TRS-80, of course, is it had no hard drive. So if you wanted to play something, you got this big floppy disk, of course. And if you wanted to attempt to save something, there was a tape drive. Yes, a tape drive. And of course, it never worked right. And it was always a pain in the butt. And I remember, again, you got to imagine 3, 4, 5, 6-year-old self here. I would take my dad's big programming book, and what I would actually do was copy the words and numbers. That was back when things were in BASIC, and it was line 10, line 20, line 30. And you'd actually copy those into a program, and you could run it off the RAM, 640K. Definitely some really good stuff there, but that got me into gaming big time. Now, the interesting thing is, on that computer, I actually played my first flight sim, and it was called P-51 Mustang Attack. This is from 1985, and one of the things I actually borrowed from my uncle, of all things, was 2 of these little joysticks that you can see over here on the right. I remember specifically this little turbo button on the back you can't see here, and the way that the game was played is one joystick was for direction and the other one was for throttle, and you'd push one to forward and you could go around. But keep in mind, I'm 3 or 4 years old at this point, or 5 years old, and just doing really, really strong power donuts and wondering, where's the enemy aircraft, kind of a thing like that. And I don't think I ever landed once. Pretty much that would have been impossible for me at the time. So, of course, a little later on, mid-90s, by the way, is I got my first, real computer, and this was a family computer. We didn't even have internet. I think it was 93, not 94, actually. And we got this thing called the Packard Bell, and it has this great piece of software that booted up when you started it, and it was called the Packard Bell Navigator, and had this great, IMAX speed movie game thing, and Dino 3D. Not Dino Park, by the way, that came later. But it was a 60 megahertz, 8 megabyte of RAM, and it had a whopping Windows 3.11 on it, which we actually installed Windows 95 over it when it came out a little while later on. And I remember spending many hours before I had to go to school that day, basically playing with calculator and Minesweeper, because I thought it was the coolest thing ever. Because those things happen. The first real flight sims that I ever played, other than the P-51, of course, was a Red Baron on the left. And no, we're not talking about Red Baron 3D. That one actually came out quite a bit later. We're talking the OG Red Baron. Now, this is no joystick days, so for me anyway. So when you do dogfights, you just use the arrow keys. I can feel that. And you'd hold down the space bar and use unlimited ammo. Go, bah, 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 bah. And then you jam your gun. You have to press U a bunch of times. And then you'd be dealing with enemy airplanes that are really, really fast. And you land on the ground and they keep passing over you. And then when they passed over you, you'd shoot them as they went by. And that was a perfectly valid strategy. But I remember playing the heck out of that game. On the right, of course, folks will recognize that as Falcon. That is the OG Falcon, not even Falcon 3 here. And I remember very, very fondly having these things called boot disks, where you take a little 3.5-inch floppy disk and you write a bunch of code on it, or you get dad to do it. Let's be realistic. And what you would do is you'd stick it in, and when the computer booted up, it would boot up the disk and dump you an MS-DOS. And one of the things that always cracked me up to death was you had to kind of tweak the XMS and XMX memory and everything and try to get these old games to actually run, because none of this was Windows, by the way. But one of the fun things that always cracked me up was, for whatever reason, you had no sound. You'd have to set up your Sound Blaster. Of course, we didn't have a Sound Blaster. Sound Blaster or compatible. Everybody remember those days with the IRQ and all those other things? Yeah, those days sucked. I hate to say it. But one of the things you would do is you load up SimCity 2000 in DOS, exit it, and then if you opened up another game in DOS, you actually would have sound, like wave sound and stuff like that. Somehow initiated the DOS drivers. Honest to God, I never knew why that worked. And to this day, I'm still befuddled by the fact it would work. But a Falcon was a fun time because you could actually name your different pilots in your group and do missions with them. And what you would do is you take the same airplane and you strafe a bunch of trucks on the ground to get their skill up to 100% and they'd never die. But you get the MiG-29 version of this, and it was really fun times, those really early flight sims. People are asking, of course, so what are my favorite games of all time? And you're definitely going to be able to identify my formative years here. I love the game Tribes. There was a mod for that called Team Aerial Combat, and I reached a number one player in the world on something called the CLQ, which was like the oh my god, something League Quake or something. It was basically a website that tracked players and take little snapshots. But I held that for like a week because I played it so much. And the Tribes 1 and 2 were super fun. Vengeance was great. I love the soundtrack. I still listen to it from time to time. I'm a bad person. And it kind of got me on this whole idea of games that were less about, simple to do this, like Minesweeper or something, and much more complex and involved. And the pace was a lot slower. And I really, really enjoyed those games. One of the things that Tribes did in the early days was here's a world that's 50 by 50 kilometers with high speed vehicles and super science fiction stuff and gun combat and so many different strategies. And the mods were fantastic for the game. And I just absolutely played it to death. Like I played that before I had a cable modem kind of to death, 56K lagging out on the 16 player servers. I mean, it was more time I would actually load up Tribes again, and I would show you how much muscle memory I have. My ability to fire a projectile that moves slowly and hit a target that's moving in 3 dimensions at a funky oblique angle to me, it's automatic. I can do that with a grenade. Like, it's unbelievable. Like, that skill does not avail me. Fallout 2 was super fun. I love that game. I just absolutely love that game. It had the right sense of humor. It had the right cruelty. It was hopelessly impossible, but it was also hopelessly detailed, and I really, really enjoyed it. Going back to play it, I played it last summer, and I was really annoyed with it because the interface is terrible. And like you really go to play it and like, why did I ever enjoy this? And I just love the environment in this story. And then when Fallout 3s and 4s came out, I mean, I like the games, but they just didn't mean the same thing to me. Command and Conquer, unit lost. Establishing battlefield control. Please stand by. Reinforcements have arrived. Boop, 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 boop. Anybody who's played Command and Conquer knows what I'm referencing there. Love it. That game had so much style, even though it looks... That's about how good it looked, by the way, even with the remastered version. They made several in the past that came afterwards, and I played every Command and Conquer game there ever was. I love the soundtrack. That'll be important later, by the way. That's one of those important trivia things. Absolutely enjoyed the games. I love the whole mythos with Cain and Tiberium. When I was sitting down to write my first novel, I wrote a novel, by the way. One of the fun things that I did was Command & Conquer was actually one of the universes I was exploring to write it. I ended up, of course, writing a novel for Tribes, and I have it sitting over my desk all nice and printed. One of these days, I might actually release it, but I feel so self-conscious about it because I'm such a better writer than when I wrote that. But it's kind of cool. Half-Life is another game. Fantastic. Once a year, I play through the entire single player. I love playing through Sven Co-op, and I actually was a moderator for Sven Co-op for 15 years. One of those things you didn't know, but I love the game. It just has so much style. It's just so memorable. It's enjoyable. I can quote every single line of that movie. Yes, but with a good purpose. It's a rare opportunity. It's the purest sample yet. Yes, and also potentially the most dangerous. Now, if we'll just follow standard insertion procedures, nothing will go wrong. Well, I don't know. I can you know what I mean. I absolutely love that game. And I like playing Sven Co-op with my friends at least once a year, maybe twice. Can never get my wife to play that one all the way through because it is jumping puzzles. Sigh. Quake, I played the death out of this game. Like these two, again, formative years. I played the absolute death out of, and I love Quake. And I put that in parentheses so I don't spend too much time on it. Alien vs. Predator 1 and 2. I'm talking the OG, by the way. Fantastic games, fantastic soundtrack, so goofy, and I absolutely loved it. I never played as Predator. It was always Alien if I could, and then sometimes Marine, but always. Free Space 2 is probably one of the greatest space simulators ever. If you have not played it, you can still find it and still play it. It's fantastic. Dark Forces, again, formative years again. Loved it. I love those old LucasArts games. Sam and Max Hit the Road. I mean, yo. But the big thing here with Dark Forces was it was just fun and cool, and the soundtrack. Oh my god, it's just gushing here. Gary's Mod, the game I have the most hours on in Steam. Believe it or not, this is the game I have the most hours, 1,800 in case you're curious. Played it to death. I mean, here's a physics sandbox that actually kind of works with a huge programming module. Yes, you've got my attention. But oh my gosh, Factorial is actually the newest game on my list. I played this one with my wife extensively. Now, this is something I should probably do a video series on because I really do enjoy it and really do have fun playing with it. But it's such a long game. It is just not like this where I just, woohoo! This is very much, okay, 40 hours later, kind of a thing like that. Fun times. So somebody, of course, also asked on the topic, what were my favorite planes? And that's like asking for me, what's my favorite, child kind of thing. It's kind of hard to do. But I did narrow it down. First of all, airliner. If I had to own an airliner, it'd probably be a 757. And the reason why is because they put this stupid big engine on a narrow body airplane and said, good enough. And it was also done in a fun time when things were going from analog to digital technology. They can take off and land everywhere. They have perfectly good range. And I love the old Delta livery, of course. And of course, if I were being a little less practical, I'd go with a Boeing 707. Nobody wants to build a good Boeing 707. I don't know what it is, but it's so stupid. It's a 737, but with four engines that are terrible, and it just black smoke out the back with controls that are fabulously heavy to move. I love it. I absolutely love stuff like that. And it's derpy, and it has a flight engineer. It's just everything I love about airplanes, but it's also a jet. And that's just, I don't know, I got a soft spot. Also the movie Airplane, but that's a different issue. Fighter jets, as if. I love the MiG-21. It would not be my number one by any means. It's just so fascinating to me because if you looked at my earlier entry with Falcon, you'd probably get why I've shot down a lot of these things. Of course, the F-16 is my favorite ever. It's the definition of, it just does everything. It's not perfect, but it's a fantastically maneuver plane. Extremely easy to use, plenty fast enough, great dogfighter, can drop any munition ever. It doesn't really have a lot of range, but it also has a fantastic fly-by-wire system. Decent, like it's just a good, like it's the definition of almost like an X-Wing kind of a thing like that. It's just practical, and I love that. And of course, I always would say to any of the Century series, for those who are not familiar with what this means, it's just the F-100, 101, 102, 104, 105, 106, of course. Awesome planes, just so magical and silver. I just love that era of airplanes because they didn't know what they were doing, and that's what makes it so much better. And I have to put the P-80 on there too because it's stupid, but I love it. Helicopter. This was hard. I had to really think about this. And then, of course, I remember a certain Jane's game from the late 90s called Comanche. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's it. So they, of course, went, oh, why did I write Longbow there? That should be Comanche, not Longbow. Oh, well, you'll forgive me. The RAH-66 is that thing on the right. They tried to make a stealth recon helicopter. And what little videos you can find of this thing, it's really quiet. And, of course, for those of you who played... not Jane's Longbow. Do you see how I got confused? The Comanche. It was a fascinating sim. It really was like an Airwolf. And of course, I put the Mi-24 down there because that aircraft is incredibly practical, and it also can carry your entire family and probably half your possessions with it, and still launch missiles afterwards. General aviation. This was easy. I was hoping somebody asked me an easy question like this, and there's my terrible picture there. The Beechcraft B-60 Duke with turboprops. I'm sorry, it's just such a cool plane. It's in the early 80s. You needed an executive airplane. They said, hey, we'll give you a nice little cabin plane. We'll put these two really big, and I think forget if they were Lycoming or Continentals on them. And they said, here you go. Of course, the general aviation slump hit in the 1980s, and it was like, oh no, game over. So it wasn't game over, though, because they built about 50, 60 of these. Probably wrong on that, by the way, but oh well. And nobody bought them. And of course, in the early 90s, a company, I forget, it was called like Rocket or something, I forget what it was, basically said, hey, we'll re-engine them with turboprops. So now you have an 1,100 horsepower plane. The fun thing about the turboprop version of this plane is it's so excessive. It's stupid excessive. Its climb rate is, 4,000 to 5,000 feet per minute. It doesn't have a yellow line. It has a red line at 160 knots or 260, I always forget. But it's such an absurd airplane, just horribly overpowered, but it's so sleek. And I just always wanted to fly one. It'll never happen, but I always liked it. Historic airplanes, they weren't specific what they meant by this. For dealing with it before World War II, Northrop Delta, of course. I mean, look at this thing. It's just like chugs. I love the fairings on the landing gear and the little tiny wheels poking out and this massive Pratt engine hanging off the front of that. That is not a fast airplane by any means, but I just love its brute force nature and the square windows. Like, you would never be able to see the instrument panel on this thing. I don't know, I'm so fascinated by this era of planes. And of course, if you're okay with after World War II-ish, that would be the Boeing 377. Super cool. I love this plane. The Boeing 307 makes my list, of course, and the DC-3 would also be on there because it's just such a fascinating plane. But this thing is just like so silly, and I love planes like that. Somebody said, what about experimental? Yeah, that's easy. The M2F3, this was basically an experiment in lifting body. I showed this to my wife, and she's like, where's the wings? I'm like, yo. I think the landing speed on this thing was like 260 or something like that. It actually had a rocket in the nose, so when you're coming in to land this thing, you'd push the button and it would lift the nose so that you could flare because the tail would do nothing at those speeds. And of course, there's also the BD5, which there is one for flight sim. I don't know why I haven't grabbed this for some reason. But this thing is so small that like if you need to like taxi it, you just put your feet out the bottom and just walk around while lifting it upwards. It's just it's awesome. But again, like I said, I love stupidity. Somebody said, "What about weapon systems in command modern operations?" You do a lot of that. That is kind of my side of command modern operations. I mean, there's other streamers who do some fantastic work actually playing the game, but my big thing is the technology. I don't know, it's kind of my theme. Of course, I was going to say the F-16, but no. Of course, there's better things than the F-16 for, especially in command. We have the F-35s and 22s, but the real answer would be the Sprint missile. For those of you not familiar with this weapon, it was designed to shoot down ICBMs at the last second. So they basically put this enormous rocket booster on it and a little tiny missile on the top. This thing accelerates at 100 Gs. If you actually do a Google on this one, the Sprint and the Spartan is what you're looking for, by the way. Watch this thing go. It's like a laser, but it's actually a missile at the top of the laser. It's absurd. And of course, if we had to pick something a little more real, gotta go with the Titan II, even though that's not the correct Titan II there. It's close enough. That's actually, I forget which one of the launching system that is. But the Titan II, it's such an excessive ICBM. And I love stuff like that. Just puts a smile on my face. And there's no S-400 in there. There's no Seawolf or Virginia in here. There's no Kilo class or even a Cara. But those are all pretty cool systems too. But I don't know. I love this thing. So then people ask me some other questions as well. And when I think of others, people asked, where do you get the passion? I think I was reading on Reddit the other day that I am the Ned Flanders of aviation YouTube. I don't know what that means, but early start. I flew on airplanes as a kid. I used to visit grandma down at Florida when 1991, 1992, I think was the first time I flew on an airplane. My brother and I still make the same exact jokes that we made at those ages, 35 years later, kind of a thing like that. I got to fly one as adults. I got the wonderful benefit of flying a Cessna 172 in my work at the New England Air Museum, if you're curious what this is. I actually worked here for 10 years, which always kind of blows me away when I realize just how many aviation tours I gave before making my first YouTube video. It kind of goes together, I think. I've always played flight sims. I kind of do them on and off, like I would play for a couple of years and I'd play, get distracted kind of a thing. I fly planes in the real world now, which obviously contributes to it. But at the same token, I don't get to fly as often as I'd like. Flying is awesomely expensive, so you have to pay for things that are important first, and then you can deal with the kind of the passion side of things. Other areas, people asking, what else would you do on your channel here? And of course, other areas, I love working with AIs. I spend far too much time playing with like your novel AIs and your chat GPTs and your art AIs and stuff like that. I don't even want to know how many millions of words I've written with them. It's unbelievable. I love hopelessly complicated sims like DMS CTS, which I actually built a video for, and then I ended up deleting it because I wasn't happy with it. It's a ship simulator, by the way. So complicated. Kongsberg is another one. BWR, boiling water reactor. I'm not talking the nuclear sim, Nuclear Ace, which is awesome. BWR is just a whole dimension more complicated. I love games like Dangerous Waters and things like that. They're just so complicated. One of the things we don't do on my channel, which I probably should, is I play games with my wife quite a bit. Like we're playing through the entire Borderlands series. We play basically once a year, and it's a ton of fun to do because it's just kind of one of those things where it's like, we play it and we both have our own way of doing things. I am very much a run ahead. And when somebody's talking, I jump on things. It's just what I do. And she's very much like, I have to soak in everything, but I'm the explorer and she's the kind of go with the plot. Like it's such an odd combo. There's other flight sims out there, which I love. TCS is fun, but it's tough to make a video that can compete with the big guys on that one. I have nothing that I can contribute to it. Like, that's how I feel about that. Building games, I love building games. They're fun, like your Minecrafts and stuff like that, your Factorios, your Foundries, your Satisfactory stuff. I do a tremendous amount of programming. My job is to teach people how to program. So it's kind of like, I know this is going to sound dumb, but in a way, this is my thing more than aviation is. But at the same token I have no idea how I could entertain with that. It would almost have to be a separate channel. Travel, I haven't got to do a lot of that the last couple of years, but I love it. More real world flying, same thing. It's just really expensive expensive, and you have to get good weather, honestly. I've canceled probably 75% of my flights due to weather, if you want to put that in another perspective. I really enjoy overly complex war games, something I've done a little bit on my channel. And believe it or not, I've been a game master for 20 years. So it's a kind of one of those things that when it comes to tabletop RPGs, I probably have 75, 80 individual RPGs, and of those I probably played half. It's quite a thing I know a little tiny bit about, but I never would do a channel on it. Again, get good competition. So a couple things. One thing that asks, and I know if Uncle Demetrius ever watches this video, he's going to make fun of me later, but that's okay. It's all in good fun. They said, what would you add or remove in Command Modern Operations? That's a great question. Number one would be a 3D rendering engine. Yes, I know we have TAC-View, but TAC-View is sort of like driving a car from the back seat. You can do it, but it's just awkward. And you know exactly what I mean. The other thing I really wish they would add is a Spanish-American War through World War II database. Do you have any idea how much fun I would have on those coal-burning 1897 chugging early battleships and the torpedoes that went like 50 feet out the tubes and accuracy measured in, hundreds of yards instead of thousands of yards? Oh my God, it's good times. Wind direction effects, that to me is a big deal. I know some people don't really, it's not that big of a problem for them, but like wind is a big thing for me in aviation, and especially for weapons. Multiplayer, we have it on the way to go. I've actually had an opportunity with the professional editions to play multiplayer. Their multiplayer is not the civilian version of multiplayer. It's going to be different. I would love to have a database unit editor that's just easy to use. The big thing is, again, because of what I've done for that company, and they've been extremely, unbelievably nice and wonderful to work for. Way too forgiving with me, is their database editor is amazing, but it's not something we can do in the consumer version, and with good reason. Absolutely. But it'd be kind of fun if we could just do it on a mission-by-mission basis. I would love if it would interface with other games. The other one would be a soundtrack by Frank Klepacki. If you don't know who Frank Klepacki is, all I have to say, we're going to have to act if we want to live in a different world. Nerd. I would love to have an AI that we could kind of give it ideas, and it just sort of ran with it. Sort of like a Heart of Iron or something like that. Things to remove, I just thought about this. The little thing that pops up when you press play game that says click here to start or whatever, I just don't need it. I'm never going to push the other buttons. Maybe it's just me. The little pong pong noise, it'd be nice if something was a little more relaxed, a little less naval, maybe something a little more calm. I don't know, it's just weird every time I hear it. Somebody asked, of course, about TCS. That brings me the most joy. Of course, this is going to be F-16. As if you see how many years I've been flying this thing. It's dang, a little insane when I really think about it. And I'll give you a treat in a second here. And of course, TCF stuff that needs to be added. I put this one on here anyway. We don't have a Tupolev 95 that you can fly. Flyable, controllable, and of course the B-52, and that's the D model of the B-52, which in my opinion is the correct model of the B-52, even though we have the vastly superior H model. The D is just so painfully Vietnam/Cold War. It puts a smile on my face. I have like a printout of like the manual for the EW operator sitting on my desk about crazy things over here. And it's like, come on, when are we going to get one of these things? So one of the things I said at the beginning of my little video here, and like I said, just answering everybody's questions, was what's my favorite sound effect that airplanes make? And let's go share that with you. This is, oh yeah, there we go. There it is. Oh, good stuff, good stuff, good stuff. All right, let's get going here. So what I mentioned in the beginning of the video, my comment there was, what is my favorite sound that an airplane makes? And first of all, I love the sounds of the engines, and I think there's so many great parts of pretty much any aircraft as far as the lovely sound effects it makes. But there's one sound effect in particular that always puts a smile on my face for some strange, bizarre reason. Probably because in the real world when I fly, it's a sound that I get to hear from time to time, kind of a thing like that. It's not the afterburner, it's not, the big sonic boom the thing makes when it kind of takes off or anything like that. It's actually the sound of air moving over the airframe when you're being mean to the airframe. I know that sounds funny, but it is my absolute favorite sound. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get myself up to 450 knots, which, as everybody knows, is the cornering speed of an unladen F-16 here. And there it is. I'm just going to pull back and pull. Listen. Maybe I'm weird. I don't know. That sound puts such a smile on my face every single time I hear it. It's just kind of one of those things that, I'll be doing a whatever kind of mission or something. By the way, isn't the F-16 freaking great? Look at this. I can just look around. I don't know. It just puts a smile on my face, too. But every time I hear that and feel that, it's like something I will do. Like, and of course, when you're flying like a Cessna 172 or something, and you're just kind of cruising along, and you start saying, "I'm gonna do some stall work." That is the sound the plane makes. What it actually will do is it makes this like satanic sound. Now that's the clue that you're being a little tough with angle of attack on this thing. And it just, like I said, I just love it. I just absolutely love it. So hopefully everybody enjoyed our little video here, our little journey through kind of my history. You can kind of see my formative years of gaming. There's a lot of things I probably missed that I'm like, oh yeah, Deus Ex was a fun game. Was it though? Have I played it recently? How bad really was it? And I absolutely love this plane. It's been such a journey, going from 0 subscribers through suddenly getting 1,000 because Matrix decided to say, hey, there's this guy who does videos on command. We'll post that on our main website. And all of a sudden I was monetized. And of course, after that, next thing you know, I did the flight sim videos with the G1000. We got another flight sim coming out next year. Woot! But one of the things was, of course, is that people gave me all these wonderful opportunities to share things I'm very, very passionate about. And I've been so glad to be able to do them with you because, like I said, without your, basically clicking on that little thing and saying, hey, what's this video about? I never, ever would have been able to get this far. My wife would have been like, yeah, Phil, you need a new hobby kind of a thing. Why don't you get into, like, playing your drums or banjo or something like that? And it's like, come on. This one's just so much fun. But that being said, my wife is unbelievably supportive of absolutely everything that I do, whether it be flying around or making these videos instead of watching the Star Wars Christmas special or something like that. I love every bit of it, and I really look forward to continuing to do these things. And thanks to all you folks, I'm able to do so. As always, go ahead and enjoy, and I'll end this video on a positive note as I bounce the plane on landing here. I love it when you put the landing gear down, the fly-by-wire changes. Now, you're expecting the best landing I've ever managed in my entire career here, right? Because, I've been gushing about the F-16 and talking about how I've been flying the F-16 since literally the 1990s and stuff like that. And you expect all sorts of wonderful things from me, but I'm not going to lie, I'm going to disappoint here. I know a little bit about this plane, but man, I have not flown it recently because I've been busy flying other things. But that's okay. Oh my gosh, this thing's heavy. You can tell how heavy it is by just how fast you have to come in to keep outside of the staple there. Oh my gosh, we're fast. We're fast. You're supposed to come in at the top of the staple with the boards out, by the way. So I'm actually perfect here. Whoa. Whoa. That's an F-16 float. Come on. There it is. Oh, that was bad. You're supposed to hold the nose up, too, when you land. So do aero braking. You actually land like this. There it is. Right there. Right there. There it is. Now I'm landing properly. Oof, that was embarrassing. You can see why I haven't done anything with the F-16 lately. We're here. Everybody out. Believe it or not, I did land with partial speed brakes out, so I did that part properly. I just love how the F-16 has a nose wheel steering button you have to push. And you know what's really fun with an F-16? You go really hard on the nose wheel steering. Oh, it's not going to do it. Usually I can get this thing to roll. Is it going to roll? I'm being too nice today. Thank you so much for your support, folks. And let's hear maybe 100,000. Wouldn't that be fun? Enjoy.